Welcome to the Munro Live podcast. I am your host, Eric. I am the producer director for a lot of the content you see on Munro Live. And today we have some special guests, Patrick and Liv from Mach-E blog. They are EV and tech nerds crafting content about their Ford Mach-E and other various electric vehicles. They have a passion for educating and supporting others and embracing the EV lifestyle, and they're always up for a good time. Patrick and Liv, welcome to the pod.
Thank you
Hello.
so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. As I mentioned before we started recording, this is only my second time hosting, so bear with me. I should probably tell the audience the reason I'm hosting today is we have a client that we're doing a large project for that is a year-long project, which is taking up a majority of our engineers' time. So that's why there's been less content on Munro Live since basically the new year. So you're stuck with me.
But that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I'm so intrigued. It sounds mysterious. What's happening?
I'm not allowed to say. So let's get started. So I've met you guys both multiple times, but I don't really know your background. So let's start with your background and what led to the decision to launch the YouTube channel.
Wow. Well, we actually made a couple other YouTube channels before this. Why did we do that really? I think we just really like making stuff and
we like
sharing stuff.
documenting things.
Yeah.
And I think we saw like people doing YouTubes and doing specifically, I think the one that excited us the most was like travel YouTube.
Adventure.
And we're like, wouldn't it be great? And I think one of the things that got us started was I think it was 2018. No, we started in 2018.
Yeah.
We were going to do a big fundraising event in Lake Tahoe with Team in Training / Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And it was like, let's document this whole thing. So that was like one of our first videos was our road trip out to Tahoe to do this big bike event. And it's actually funny that YouTube is up online. I think it's has like maybe 40 views now. So, breaking all the barriers.
And it took us forever to edit, and it was all really challenging, but it was fun and learning.
Literally the first words out of Liv's mouth were like, I don't know what I'm doing. Patrick says I should just act like you're right here with me, and then starts talking. Or
that's how it
like
starts. If you're thinking about making a YouTube channel, that's how it starts. Just start.
So what's the name of this channel? And you said it's still out there?
Yes.
It's zealology. Zealology. Yeah.
A word we made up. Basically, we were like, it's the science of living with passion, right?
The science of living with zeal. Yeah. Zealology. So we just wanted to share the things that we enjoyed. We got the Southwest Companion Pass, if you know it. They did the special deal, and basically Patrick would buy a plane ticket and I would fly for free. So we're like, oh my gosh, this will be so fun. We made videos on it. No one watched them. We had the best time though. We learned things, and that is still out on YouTube with 3 watches or whatever. But that was the start of it. And then the pandemic hit.
Pandemic hit, so we both started doing like YouTube just at home. I did some tech ones. She did some makeup ones. But then also like we'll just jump all over the place. So and then the reason the Mach-E vlog came into play was one of our videos that we were making. And so like the first appearance of the Mach-E on our YouTube was the Zoology channel, but we were doing a life day adventure for Liv, and we were in LA for the LA Auto Show, actually for another reason, but we just decided to go to the LA Auto Show, and the Mach-E was there. And so we sort of like, here's the Mach-E, this is great. And I remember saying at the time, or actually Liv remembers more to me.
I remember Patrick was very pointed, and he was like, I think I should make a YouTube channel out of this. I think people would watch that. And at the time I was like, you think? Okay. And so the pandemic hit, and he made the Mach-E vlog, and people watched it, and other people were psyched about it. And Patrick placed his order for the Mach-E, or our order, and documented the process. And that really just snowballed in a great way.
Well, that leads me into my next question. So why the Mach-E? And were there other EVs, or did you just wanted to do the Mach-E?
Well, it's multi-part. So like I had watched Tesla through the years and was excited by everything that Tesla was doing, but it was like it was never just right for me. So it was like Model S came out and I'm like, I don't want a big sedan. Then the Model X came out and I was like, yay, an SUV, but I'm like, I don't need a big SUV.
I'm expensive.
Inexpensive.
Yeah.
Model 3 came out and I was like, smaller, and if I were going to have like a commuter car, that would be fantastic. But Liv wanted like a compact SUV, and then sort of in that time frame, there were no like compact small SUV EVs. And the Model Y was announced, the Mach-E was announced at about the same time, and I still actually have the somewhere the text message where as the Model Y was being announced, I was texting her all the info about it. And the same thing, like when the Mach-E was announced, I was doing the same thing, like, oh my god, look at this. So I was excited by both, but I did grow up in like a Ford family. I literally came home from the hospital in a 65 Mustang. So I
Oh,
was
nice.
very excited by the prospects of basically like everybody in my family's owned a Mustang but me. So now I own a Mustang. It just happens to have four doors and an electric powertrain. So we still considered the Model Y. We did a test drive. There were a couple of things that are particular to us that are like major reasons why we didn't choose the Model Y. And one is the door handles. And I know a lot of people are like, yeah, the door handles aren't that great, but you get used to them. But
I have ergonomic concerns, so I can only use like these two fingers of my left hand. So dexterity is really important to me. So the Model Y, the door handles were just kind of blurred. But for me, I don't have a history with Ford. I had no attachment to Mustang really, but his WRX, it was manual. We needed to get an automatic that we could both drive. So when we saw the Mach-E, I was just like, dang, that's pretty. I was not expecting that to look that good. They had it out there. The lights were amazing. And I didn't think that we were going to get it. And I still remember you put a reservation so we could go get up on stage and like play with it. That's how they get you. They sucker you. And then you play with it and you can sit with the reservation.
Is this the first EV you guys owned?
yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I knew that that I wanted to go EV, and I wasn't necessarily sure if I was ready, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do the YouTube, was to sort of go through that process as well. And I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I also thought like if I bought a gas car in 2020, which is when I thought I would get the Mach-E, like that's great. But I usually keep my cars for like 10 years. And I was like, in 2030, that's going to be like ancient history. So you know what I mean? It's like I sort of had this projection in my own mind that I don't want a gas car years out. I wasn't sure if I was ready for it in 2020, but I sort of knew that by 2030 I was going to regret having a gas car.
So you said you came from a Mustang family. Um, my favorite Mustang is like what people consider like one of the ugliest ones. It's like the 8990 like hatchback. It's one of my favorite ones, and it's like the least popular one. So
And I tried to buy one because I was in the military at the time. I was just coming back from Germany. I was stationed over there, and it was actually a '91 Mustang that I was trying to buy. And I remember, like, I went to the dealer, got all the details, and then I called up my dad's insurance agent because he had been with him for like 20 years, and he literally just laughed at me. He was just like, "You, there's no way you could. Your car insurance is going to be more than your car payment."
yeah, I went in high school. I took automotive classes, and one of like the school project they had an '89 white Mustang hatchback with blue stripes going down the middle, and I just fell in love with that car. But going back to your YouTube journey as a fellow content creator, what has been the most rewarding aspect and the most challenging part of your journey so far?
I think for me, the most rewarding part has been the community. Like that was very unexpected how incredible that would be. Like we've shared, we did other YouTubes just for fun. And there wasn't community there. The response wasn't great. And then the moment we made this or started this community, we found the most incredible people, the most incredible EV enthusiasts and car people. And that's been an incredible and rewarding surprise for me.
Yeah, that's been the best part is, I mean, like meeting you, meeting Sandy.
Yeah.
It's been great meeting people that we see online, and then they're like, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" But also, like, I still remember one instant where I was like, "This is just unreal." And we were in New York for the New York Auto Show, and just walking at a Ford Lightning event, and somebody goes, "Hey, how's Blucifer doing?" Which is the
The
name
name
of
of
our
our
Mach-E.
Mustang.
And I'm like, not only did we get recognized, but somebody's checking in on our car. So it was like, it just seems real that like people are following that aspect, and it's just a bit unreal. And I think just always the most challenging part is finding time to do all the stuff we want to
Yep.
do. We're literally like, I don't tell my boss I put in that I'm at a doctor's appointment right now.
I'm taking my lunch break. We have full-time day jobs, so definitely the most challenging thing is juggling creating the content. Because I was thinking about it the other day. If we had part-time jobs, with the amount of time that we put into doing this, we would be earning way more than we earn. Like it's totally not commensurate with the amount of time that you invest in this, but it's so rewarding. That community thing feeds back into it. So it's so rewarding that we keep going, but the challenge and the reward.
Is that the goal? Do you wanna, like, eventually become full-time creators or no?
I don't know.
For me, no.
Yeah.
And that's only because I'm so invested in the company that I'm working for that I don't want to lose that. And it provides me with stability, but also a lot of flexibility. So I get off basically like a month of vacation per year, but I can also say, like, I got to be out for a bit. So for me, no, but I would love to have somebody as a full time editor.
If yeah, if it ever happened, it would certainly be me. But I do appreciate having the security of a full-time job. This content creation stuff is very unpredictable. You don't know what's going to take off. You don't know how much content you can make. And as we've kind of hinted at, I have multiple physical disabilities. I was injured in a bombing when I was 16, and that was the life day that Patrick referred to that we were celebrating earlier. So for me, like the security of knowing that I have a job that I can do when I'm sitting at a computer, although you can do that for content creation. So it's like it's maybe, but
Yeah, and going back to the YouTube community, it's crazy. So I've been doing YouTube for 15 years now, but for 10 of that was a majority for like B2B. So it wasn't like I was doing YouTube, but it didn't feel like YouTube. And then I came at Munro, and then you really feel that community. You meet other creators that you've been watching, and you really feel that community, and it's really cool. But it's so weird how there's two different sides of YouTube because the B2B is so boring. No one watches your videos except for like corporate America. No one comments on them. And then now it's like complete opposite at Munro. Like I've met tons of creators like you, and it's just weird how small the YouTube community seems, but large at the same time. And
Yeah,
speaking
it's
of, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say we were at Fully Charged Live, and that's like one of the first times we had like this big YouTube creator gathering, like at dinner right afterwards. And I was like, I was looking around. I remember thinking, I was like, this looks like my subscription feed
oh
in
yeah.
YouTube, because it was like I literally looked around a room and it was the Kilowatts and Kyle without a spec, and I think Sandy showed up at one of them, Misco Electric. So it was like all the people that we watch. I was like, they're right here.
It's so cool.
Yeah, so you guys had the opportunity to meet Jim Farley, and I want to know if you can share your experience and impressions you got from that encounter. But before you answer, I got a funny story to share about when I met Jim Farley. So, um, when he came to Monroe for the interview, I was in the back. We had to set up, and he pulls around with his security, and he comes like running up, and he's sweating, and he comes charging at me, and he's like a pretty big guy, and all I see is like Chris Farley because he had like the shaggy hair at the time, and he comes running up. He's like, where's the bathroom? I'm like, it's right there. And he goes marching in. And I was just like, it was just like, it looked, acted, sounded like a Chris Farley skit. He was just like, where's the bathroom? Just sweating, just like, so sorry, Jim. But
yeah, it's
funny.
funny.
That was my first time meeting him. And it was just like,
it's and meeting him in person, and it's like I try not to be one of those. It's like, that's Chris Farley's cousin, but when you meet him in person, you really do get that vibe. And it's interesting. My brother and I were talking about this. Is like, sometimes you have brothers that don't even look alike, but him and Chris Farley look alike, and they're cousins.
I'm glad you said that, because I forgot that was all I was thinking the first time I met him. Was like, oh my gosh, you look just like him. And now it's like, no, that's Jim Farley. It's cool, but like initially, definitely.
Yeah, his mannerisms, like the way he was acting, because like, you know, he really needed to use the restroom. It was just like almost like I was in a skit. I was like, what is going on? But yeah, super nice guy. He took time to say hello, shook everyone's hand. The complete opposite of when I met Elon, but I'll save that story for another time.
I think that the cool thing about Jim Farley is that he's this interesting combination of a person who's clearly the best suited for the job he's in, and is in the best job for him. Like, he's having the best time doing everything, and he's so great at it too.
Yeah, it was like the first time that we were going to meet him, he was on his EV road trip. Well, actually, I shook his hand in Detroit, but it was like masses of people. I won't count that. But like the first time we sort of like really met and talked, he was on his EV road trip. And I sort of figured, because like Ford invited a few EV owners, including some like Tesla and Rivian owners, as well as Ford EV owners, to meet him. And I thought it might be, you know, what we all sort of imagine. It'd be like, hi, I'm so and so, and he's like, oh, nice to meet you. Photo, move on. But we got there, and they actually had like a circle of chairs, and they're like, Jim's going to sit here. Let's get everybody seated. And it was like a 45-minute discussion. And the first part of the discussion wasn't even about EVs. It was about cars. And that's one of the biggest things I came away with. And I sort of knew, but it's like, you really get that sense when you meet him. He's truly a car guy. And, you know, I think a lot of people assume he is a car guy as in old, you know, because he races classic cars. But he really is like everything about cars and about future cars. And he used a quote at a recent event that I attended in Charlotte, that his favorite car is just like Carroll Shelby's favorite car, and that's the next one. So he is in like the perfect job. He loves cars, and he's always excited by what's coming next. And you could really tell, like when he was talking about T3, Ford's new truck, that their EV truck that they're building the plant for right now. He's like super excited by it, and like I got the sense he wanted to share that. So it was just like, you can tell he's a car guy. And then going back to the race car thing, like I was lucky enough to fill in for Kyle Connor from Out of Spec, because he was in Germany at the time. But I ended up going to Charlotte for that event that I mentioned, and you know, they had the Lightning switchgear there, which is like basically super off-road version of the Lightning. But they also had the Supervan 4, actually Supervan 4.2 technically, there at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. And they're like, we're going to have a special driver when you guys are ready for your ride. And I was like, I don't really care, blah, blah, blah. It's some race car driver that I probably know, but I get to ride in the Supervan 4.2. I'm super excited. Well, as I'm like getting my helmet on and getting ready, they're talking to the driver, and they're like, Jim this and Jim that. And I'm like, no, it can't be. And sure enough, when it's my turn, I get in, and it's Jim Farley behind the wheel of this one-off 1,400 horsepower race car. And we took off, and we like, our lap was like, you know, just a minute. But he like, I had to trust him, because he was there was walls coming at us very quickly, but you could tell like he knew the lines to take. He's experienced, and he did that the entire day. Like before lunch, after lunch, he was just giving ride after ride. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's a car guy.
Where was our invite, Ford?
Right.
Yeah.
Now we actually have a great relationship with Ford. So shout out to Emma, who's been like my main contact. She's been great. But speaking of Ford, so Ford EV sales are currently on a decline. So what factors do you believe contribute to that? Why is there no real demand for their products at the moment?
It's disappointing. I think everybody's struggling right now, and you know, I've watched things from, I think it's like Car Dealership Guy on Twitter and things like that. I know that inventories across the board have skyrocketed. So there was like just over a year ago, there were 1 million new cars in inventory, and that's skyrocketed up to 2.6 million cars in inventory currently on the lots. So I know everybody is struggling, and it's interest rates. There's the overall general market, and I think there's still just a lot of bad publicity out there about EVs. And although the Lightning is, I think, um, been fairly successful. I mean, we've all seen the news. It's not ramping up as quickly as Ford has wanted. And I think there are a couple of key factors for Ford, at least. One is the charging issues that have been prevalent out there that are hopefully going to get resolved relatively soon with new access to the supercharger network. Um, but I also think it's just a matter of there's pushback coming from the dealers. From what I can see, we know that originally they had, I think, like about 75% of the dealers were signed up to sell EVs, and that's dropped down to like 66%. And I think it's dropped even lower. So it's, you know, I think it's just a matter of like the overall market is struggling. But also specifically within EVs that's struggling, and then Ford EVs have their own challenges. The Mach-E, when it came out, it was fantastic. The only competition was the Model Y. And like when we looked at it, one of the other reasons that we didn't go with the Model Y was it didn't get the tax credit. And I believe it was like about $8,000 more than an equivalent Mach-E. Well, now the Model Y gets the tax credit, and it's as cheap or cheaper than the Mach-E. So, the market has changed as well. Not to mention there's the ID4, the EV6, Genesis,
Ionic 5.
Ionic 5. I mean, there's so much more competition now as well. So it's challenging. There and a lot of their adjustments, luckily, aren't like permanent. It's not like they're closing factories. They're reducing the production out of the Lightning plant, but that's easily you know turned around if the demand comes back. There's two battery plants that they're building in Kentucky, for example. They're still building two plants, but they're only going to go online with one of those. But it's still going to produce 43 gigawatt hours of batteries out of that. And they're still building the plant in Tennessee that's going to produce 43 gigawatt hours as well. So they got a lot of capacity that's going to be coming online in the next probably year and a half. They're supposed to go in production with those in 2025. So there's a lot coming, and they're scaling back, but they still have a lot that they're putting out there.
Yeah, I personally, so before we tore down the Mach-E, it's probably the car I've driven the most outside of the Model 3 that's the company's here. And I really enjoy the Mach-E. I like the way it looks, like the way it drives. My biggest complaint is I like the horizontal screen versus the vertical. So I want them to flip it, but that's just me. So, and I can say, like Tesla, Ford they listen to criticism, and they're willing to make changes and adapt. But so as an owner, what improvements do you think Ford needs to make to the Mach-E from a consumer perspective?
Faster charging, honestly, to keep up with everything that needs to come.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is charging. The ranges could be slightly improved. We could get a California Route 1, which they're actually discontinuing for 2024, but you can get a longer range Mach-E that's 300 and some miles of range. We have the GT Performance Edition, which is rated at 260. So I'd love to see that increase. But access to the Tesla supercharger network or just better charging doesn't have to be Tesla. That's one big improvement, as well as the 800 volt or whatever they need to do to get faster charging. So, for us, it hasn't been a big deal because we charge at home 95% of the time. But we see, like the Taycan and the e-Gimp cars from Hyundai Motor Group, and it's nice, to be able to pull in and pull out so quickly. I think it's all around charging, better charging network, better charging speeds, and then everything else is minor. Like whether you have a vertical or horizontal screen, that's always going to be down to personal preference, unless you do Fisker and have it rotate on you. But
if it could stay like that when you drive, though,
yeah,
it's only when you're stationary.
Yeah. I mean, charging is like everyone's issue at the moment outside of Tesla.
yeah. Otherwise, I mean, like we've been really happy with the technology in the Mach-E. I'm excited by Ford's. I think they're calling it the Ford Digital Experience or the Lincoln Digital Experience. So they're moving away from the Sync 4A system and moving into Android Automotive, and that's going to be across the board. So I'm excited by those changes and the capabilities that's going to give it, as well as better hardware underneath, so it won't be laggy compared to what we have now. And they're keeping Android Auto and CarPlay, which is a big deal for me.
That is big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, we know that there's always going to be changes and updates, and but we're really happy. The two of the things that we really like, or that I really like about our current Mach-E, is the Magna Ride suspension. It's just so freaking good, and we're really happy with Blue Cruise. So it's been we've as we've started reviewing other cars, we've reviewed a lot of systems from a lot of companies, and all of them have their own issues, but I just like the way Ford does it. It's just feels like it's a collaborative system, so that you're monitoring it, but you're not, exactly what it's going to do. So it's like we've been really happy with it.
How often do you use Blue Cruise? Because I personally, if someone like, I don't own an EV yet, but like I never use cruise control. Like I'm not a big road tripper. If it's over 4 hours, I prefer to fly. Um, so how often do you actually use the Blue Cruise?
So I have a doctor that is in Santa Ana, so that's an hour away, and we have to go there pretty often, like sometimes once a week. So I think you use it like 98% of the time
Yeah,
on the drive. The moment you get on the
as soon as
highway.
we get out of the neighborhood and we're on the highway, I turn it on, and I hear you, because like I had a WRX, and I'm like, I don't like automatics. I had my stick shift, and I don't use cruise control. And part of that was because I may have been exceeding the speed limit, and it was like I don't want to have to hit the brakes to slow down. Anyways, we won't talk about that. But it's like once we got the Mach-E and once we had Blue Cruise, it's like changes the whole thing of where, especially going up into Orange County, Southern LA traffic, where it's like all of a sudden I just turn it on and I don't have to worry about it. Somebody cuts me off, it's going to slow down. It's like it handles everything so much better, and just makes it so it's like a relaxing drive, and we talk and we make videos, and just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, and part of it really is that we have this repetitive drive that's on long distance on the highway. So I'm sure like other people who have long commutes that are like longer than half an hour on the highway probably enjoy Blue Cruise too.
Yeah, we have it on our Lightning here, but I rarely go on expressway with it, so I've only used it a handful of times, and it's nice when it works.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, because like with Blue Cruise hands free, it's only on the freeway, but we can do hands on like um, any road where it detects the lines. But I'm like, I don't like, why, especially because like almost none of these systems stop at a stoplight when you have that system on, or like Blue Cruise on. So it's like it does, like, to me it just doesn't, like, I don't use it in those situations around city driving or anything like that. I know FSD works in those But even then, like our short test with it, I was like, I don't think I would use it that much. It just freeway driving is just another realm, and it makes it relaxing.
Yeah, we're actually working on an ADAS deep dive video explaining the different levels, demonstrating as many as we can, and getting into this how the system works, all the sensors, cameras, you know, radar versus lidar. We're doing a whole deep dive that hopefully will be coming out in the next couple months. But so moving back onto Ford, what vehicle do you think they should electrify next?
Ha! Two-door Bronco. That'd be so fun.
Yeah, it's hard not to want to see an electric Bronco. I
Yep.
mean, that would just be so cool.
Yep.
It may not be as practical for us, but
Yep.
it would be hard to say no because that would just be very cool.
And so cute.
Um, I would also love to see the Maverick electrified, and the hybrid is already selling like just crazy numbers for Ford. But a fully electric one would be great, but I don't know the platform is big enough to give them the range that wouldn't attract headlines, because I think it would probably be like a 200 something mile range because it's just not that big of a vehicle. But I think it'd be super cool to have a lower end, smaller truck that would be electric. But really, it's the Bronco. I think they could sell as many electric Broncos as they could produce.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that's my choice as well. I really love the Bronco. Um, and they're coming up with the Explorer is the next one, right? It's available in Europe or should be available in soon in
Well,
Europe.
yeah. So there's two Explorers. The one in Europe is like about to be in production or is in production, and it's based off of the VW MEB platform. So it's going to be basically like Ford versions of the ID4, smaller than the US Explorer.
I like the ID4.
But there was supposedly, there was a lot of talk that Ford is going to come out with a 3-row EV SUV at some point. In that, logically, everybody was assuming that's going to be the Explorer. So I would love to see Ford enter into the 3-row SUV market.
The old Expedition, something like that big.
Well, I think they're looking at, who knows, nobody wants to really say, but I think they were talking about like an Explorer size, but it would be 3-row. So basically, I'm, like a competitor to the EV9. So we went to Kia over the weekend, and they had a ton of EV9s, and the salesman said they were selling a ton of EV9s as well. So I it seems like there's a big demand in that area versus the compact SUV where there's just tons of competition right now.
Yeah, as someone who has a dog and 2 young kids, bigger is better.
Yeah,
You need an EV9.
yeah. The Cadillac IQ.
We're trying to get an EV9 in here. I was told at the end of January that we in the Detroit press fleet, but I have yet to get confirmation on when we will get in one to review. So we've obviously met multiple times. I think mostly at Tesla events.
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
So
Yeah.
knowing how passionate the Tesla fans can be, how have they embraced you and welcomed you within their community?
The people that we meet in person have been fantastic. The people that we meet online have been mostly fantastic. um, Last year we went to Tesla Takeover. It was so much fun. Everybody was just very welcoming. They wanted to check out a Mach-E if they hadn't seen one. There was that good-natured rivalry of like, here, let's go, where we're going to dinner. It's like, we'll take the Model Y. We know that one won't break down or whatever, and then like, it's just good natured. It's fun. But everybody's been super fun and welcoming. We are friends with Will and Marty, who run the SoCal Tesla Club, but they also now run the SoCal EVs Club. And just put on the best events. And every time we go, we just have a ton of fun, and it's great.
Yeah, it's all just enthusiast communities. It's cool to see what all the Tesla people do to their vehicles. Like there's so many cool mods, and I know it's going to trickle over. Like there's EV out here who does mods for Mach-E's and other EVs. So it's cool to see like what our community will expand to. And I think it might stop at some point being the Tesla community and the CCS community or whatever. And it's just going to be like EV community. So yeah, it's a path. Yeah.
And and the only negativity that I generally get, other than like, why would you buy the Mach-E? And I'm like, well, I like it, and you like your Model Y or 3, good for you. That type of stuff doesn't bother me. But every time we post anything about, the Mach-E is going to be able to charge at superchargers, it's like 95% good comments, and then you'll get the one person that's like, well, if I see your Mach-E charging at my supercharger, I'm going to slash the tires. And you're just like, if,
Well, that kind of brings me into my next question. Your thoughts on Ford and other EV owners gaining access to the Tesla supercharger network? Because I believe Ford just announced they're sending out the adapters.
Yeah.
They announced they will have a form available. Then you'll fill out your information. They'll verify that you actually own them, the vehicle, and then they'll send you the one adapter per car. So, and it's free, and they're going to even cover shipping. So I was like, that's cool. I think that's cool. I think it's going to be a huge bonus. And part of it is like, we know the reliability of the Tesla network is far and above what we've experienced so far with Electrify America. And then the other thing is like, it doesn't matter, who it is, if we're getting almost double the amount of chargers that are available to us with a click of a button. That's positive news. And I think there's going to be issues with, parking at a supercharger when they're crowded. There's going to be issues with bolts coming to superchargers when they're crowded and charging at 50 kilowatts. But I think that's all going to, work itself out over time. A lot of superchargers are busy, like around here in Southern California, but there's a lot of places that I know where I've been at like an EA station with 4 stalls that are completely full, and there's like a car waiting, and then you could see like across the street there's a Tesla supercharger with 16 stalls and only 8 are in use. So it's going to work itself out. I mean, it's just more options, hopefully. Like I was saying earlier, like with the sales of the Mach-E and the Lightning starting to dip down in January, is like their first big dip. Maybe this will help. Like once the adapters are out there and people are like, oh, you can charge at all these other places, and it becomes a little bit easier to sell that might help out as well.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And I don't love when anything is proprietary. So making it all accessible to everyone, I think it's going to be a little rough over the next couple of years. Like there'll be some growing pains, but once we get over the hump, then it's just going to be like people charging.
And we're going to do our part. And it's just the same as like we try to educate, people in general. So we're like, if you have a Bolt and you go to an EA station and there's 3 150s and there's one 350, if you have a Bolt, you should stick to the 150s if possible. And then now as we open up with the Tesla supercharger network, it might be like, because of the charging port location on the Mach-E, it might be, if you can, park at the one that's on the far right of the superchargers, because then you're actually not parking in a supercharger space to use that last one. And then if you see a Mach-E parked at the very end, park next to them, because it ends up not taking up as many spaces if we stick together as CCS cars. And the same things we got to train all EV owners on. It's like, don't charge past 80% unless you absolutely need to. Just EV education. That's sort of what we've been about with our channel as well.
Yeah, it's crazy how like there's charging etiquettes. As someone who doesn't own an EV, like I just pull up, pump my gas, pull out, don't even think about it, Then like now there's like you got to be courteous, and
But I mean, if you think about it, like you pump your gas and then you move your car to go get stuff, right? You don't just leave your car at the gas pump once you're done. So like there's certainly
and I do.
etiquette.
Well,
Right.
I think
But
it
like we're
depends.
used to the gas station etiquette. We don't even think about it. Like you pump, you move your car, right? But like it's sort of just these little tweaks that we'll get used to with charging.
It's
I'm
like if
that
you
guy
go
that
to
pumps, goes inside, grabs a Red Bull candy bar, comes outside, pulls it out, then
Are
oh,
you?
yeah.
Okay, that's fast.
Yeah, I think I think we'll all learn and adapt, and there's still going to be the we've all been there at gas stations where the person finishes pumping their gas and then they like go into the store and they're like you're like the pumps are all full and this person is
Move.
doing whatever and you're like please just move. And there still be that person at the supercharger. One advantage that we're going to have moving to the superchargers, one problem that we won't have, I should say, is the like ID4 and the Ionic 5 owners, those type that have free charging on EA. They're just like running around town is like I may as well charge for free. Everybody's paying at the supercharger except for the people that have unlimited supercharging, which is few. So that won't be a problem. It'll work itself out.
one more Tesla question before we move on. Cybertruck. So I'm on record, not a fan of the styling. Although in person, it's better looking than in photos. But it's just not from styling, just not for me. What are your thoughts?
We haven't seen one in person.
Yeah,
Can
we
you believe
haven't.
that? Our
So you
friends
guys are
have
in
them.
California. How have you not seen one in
Yeah.
person
I
yet?
know. I in fact, they had like a big charge positive. One of our friends met up with Will and Marty, who just got their F to pump. They just got their Cybertruck, and like the start of their video, they were at the Carlsbad Superchargers on Saturday. We were there on Sunday doing a meetup, so it was like we missed it by a day.
Yeah.
I'm not like it's sort of like I'm not a huge fan of the styling. Um, but at the same time, I like people picking something that suits them, and so I'm not like, oh, I hate the styling. I mean, I think it's just it's an interesting design. For me, I don't like I like curves and which is why like I think the Mach-E has enough of those curves and whatnot. Um, it and I think the Cybertruck is one of those where it's in some angles you're like, whoa, that looks cool, but then there are other angles, like the rear, like it just is like, oof, that looks like a refrigerator.
I think it looks like I think it looks pretty cool. I think I don't know if I would want one or want to drive around with it, but it's more that like so that small little negative Tesla group, I'm a bit nervous of them if we say anything. Like if we test out the Cybertruck and we're like, "Ooh, they're gonna be intense in person." So I'm like, what is the Cybertruck driver gonna be like? So that's what I'm nervous about is like be a nice person.
For me, another thing that I think about is like cars that are have a really good design. They look good in photographs and they look good in person and they look good in every color. The Taycan is one because there's like a coffee color for the Taycan,
I don't know
which
though.
sounds like it'd be horrible, but when you actually see it, you're like, oh, that actually does look pretty good as well. The Cybertruck, I think, looks good at certain angles. As you said, it looks better in person than in photos. But I think certain angles it doesn't look good, and certain colors. Now that we're starting to see people wrap them,
That red one is pretty.
yeah, like the
Someone did
red
a
will look
matte
good.
red wrap and that looked good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely looks better wrapped than the stainless for sure. So
If we had
follow-up
Yeah.
one,
question.
I think I would have to wrap it as like a Frigidaire, like put a soda dispenser on it and a handle and
I'd have to make it sparkly. Like tone it down a bit. The grr, make it all sparkly.
So follow-up question. Would you want Ford to do something more out of the box like the Cybertruck or stick to the more traditional look?
Yes. But as long as I think if they did something out of the box, that's cool. But my concerns, I study in industrial design. I have a disability. I have all these concerns. So my concerns are the ergonomics, our function first. So as they can think out of the box, but there's some things that I think need to be addressed first, which is like how we use it. So solve problems, create innovation, don't create challenges for the human. And I think sometimes we can innovate in a way that makes things more challenging. So these are my reservations on the Cybertruck, is like, I want to wait and see it, because that's where I come first, is ergonomically, functionally, is this welcoming for the human? Because I don't think that the driver or a person using something should have to learn how to do something or should be challenged by something to the point where there's discomfort. If you can't figure out how to do something, or if you're doing something wrong, then the designers did something wrong. It's not your fault. The designers should be watching how you use things and solving your problems before you even know about them. And testing vehicles, we've seen tons of automakers that you'll see a feature and you're like, I didn't know I needed this, but whoa, like that's a good designer and they're watching you. So Ford, do that, go crazy, but ergonomically first. What do you have to say?
Function. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love like out there designs. But specifically in regards to a truck, it's like function has to win out. And I think like one of the home runs of the Lightning is the Mega Power Frunk. It's so big and functional. It has lighting. So like when it's the hood is up, you have lighting on the workspace. Has the drain, like all of these things that are just like they took what they had to work with, basically the regular F-150 shape, and they made it something very cool. And then I think Tesla, like they made the front look super cool on the Cybertruck, but I think they lost some potential functionality the people that I know that have Lightnings, they're like the best feature that they didn't think about at the time was the Power Frunk or the Mega Frunk. So useful, and they use it for way more than they ever thought they would.
You guys brought up something that made me think about when we used to do more ride and drives on the channel. We used to approach it as you just landed in a new city, you rented a car, you jump in, go. How intuitive is it? And that's how we approached our ride and drives. But so many people would get upset saying, like, you didn't read up on the car, you didn't read the manual, like, how can you review this? And like, we're engineers, we want to know if it's intuitive.
Yeah.
Totally, 100%. I love that. I would love to see more of that. Yeah, that's how it should be.
Yeah, it's and I get there are certain things like the gear shift on the Mach-E, you know, you may be used to one that's on the stalk or whatever, and you're like, but it's intuitive enough. You look down and you say PRNLD, you're like, oh, okay, that's where the gear shift is at. Um, but things like and I know this may be controversial for some, but putting the blinker as buttons on the steering wheel versus a stalk, I'm like that would absolutely drive me crazy. And I know I would probably get used to it, but I remember many years ago when I was stationed in England and I had a Toyota that I was over there and the blinker was on the right side instead of the left side. It drove me nuts. Almost every time I turned, I would accidentally turn on the windshield wipers instead of using my blinker. And part of it's because I was hopping back and forth between cars. But to me, that's the same thing. It's like it's very hard to break that like muscle memory of something that like so simple and is like, why does it need to change? It just
Yeah, but like one pedal driving is amazing and very helpful for a lot of people. But I know people have some questions about like when you have to hit the brake, like would you hit the accelerator or things like that? There's
yeah.
certain things that we can learn, but for the most part, it shouldn't be challenging, and you should be able to get into something and learn it as you go intuitively, for sure.
And the one pedal, I think there's been a lot of not a lot, but a few cases where the unattended acceleration has been proven the fact that people got confused between the gas pedal and the brake pedal. So, going back to what Liv was saying, uh, you can get used to it and it's a positive, but if how many instances of where somebody mistakes the wrong pedal does it become an issue?
Mm.
So This kind of leads into the next question. So you also have another channel. You have multiple channels, even like past hidden channels we learned about. So you guys reviewed multiple EVs. Apart from Ford, what vehicle has impressed you the most and what left you disappointed?
We're in agreement on this. Like
Yeah.
we sort of have talked about this.
Said it
Go
separately.
ahead.
Most impressed with the Genesis GV70. It's just it's baller. That car, it hits me. It's so gorgeous. It's so comfortable. Does have a thing or two I didn't like, but it's just a lovely vehicle to be in.
And I think it was part of it was like it surprised us how good it was.
Yeah,
Um, and it just did a lot of things right for the price point. And that's part of it was like we had a
totally.
Mercedes EQS 580 SUV, which is, almost double the cost. I think it was double the
Yeah.
cost. And then you go over to the GV70, the electrified GV70, and you're like, this is pretty nice. It's not Mercedes nice, but it's pretty darn nice.
Yeah, it was definitely a cost benefit analysis too of like, this is how much? Whoa.
And then the one that disappointed us the most.
Mutually, the Lexus RZ 450e. Also, cost benefit wise, if it was, I don't know, 15,000 cheaper, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, all right.
Well, if it met the use case, if you don't road trip, and if you're mostly local without, don't need a ton of range, it's fine. But it's like charging is not great, range is not great, drives okay. But then I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, I could see why somebody would buy this. But then it's like it's the same
It's the
price as a
price.
Mach-E GT, and it doesn't do anything as good as the Mach-E GT.
And it had the photochromic roof, like you press the button and it goes opaque, but
That was cool.
that was cool.
Yeah, I can't remember if we had the 60 or the 70, but we reviewed one of them and it was nice, I can't remember if it was 60 or
The
70
60
though.
is, I would love to review the 60. It's cuter and smaller and has some
Rounder.
similar aesthetics, but
Yeah, it's I
70 is
mean,
quite big.
the Hyundai Motor Group's platform is just so good charging wise that it's hard to not like it. Um, it was just a lot of that was one that we had a friend in town that has a Mach-E, and we were showing him around town, but we kept on using the Genesis, and it was sort of like this is sort of a nice car. Like when you have company in town, like it just feels nice. It's very quiet inside. And we also had people in town when we had the Lexus, and it was just so many things bugged us about it. And one of the biggest things was charging, because I was like, we had to run down to San Diego and back, and then over to the airport and back. And it was like, oh my God, we got a charge again already. And it just,
Because it was mostly sub 200 miles of range, like 195 most of the time. So
Yeah.
when you break 200, it feels like you always got to charge.
Okay, yeah. So we had just looked it up here. We reviewed the GV60 and it had that stupid little crystal ball thing in the middle, which I found annoying. But overall, like there were some things I liked about it. For me, what impressed me the most, and this is just purely driving, was the BMW i4. I really enjoyed just driving it, the way it handled, the way it felt, the way it took corners. Like it was my first time driving a BMW, and I was blown away on how fun I had just driving it.
I think
We
that's,
need to review that.
yeah. I think that's the hard part is like, when EVs were newer, it's like everything was the spec, charging speed and range. And then everything else was secondary. But I think it's really cool now that we're getting into a time period where we're getting back to like driving dynamics. How does it feel? Is it quiet? Does it feel the materials feel good inside? And this is what we've gone through, since cars became a thing. Um, People don't always buy on specs as long as they reach your minimum needs. It's like people aren't going to care about 0 to 60 time because all cars are pretty darn quick when they're an EV. People aren't going to care about range if the charging stations are a lot closer together. Then we'll get back into the differences in how does a car feel, how does it look, is it in a color that I like, which are all super important reasons to most buyers.
I feel like I have a question for you, Eric. How do you test drive these EVs and then you go back to an ICE vehicle? Because we drove an ICE vehicle a couple months ago and it just feels so sluggish. Like the
Oh
instant
my
torque.
god! So my personal vehicle, my lease is almost up. I have a Jeep Compass. It is small, it is slow, and my wife likes to point out every time you see one of those in the wild, it's 90% it's a female driving it. Sh So, yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I got it, because it was, like, the cheapest car I could lease a couple years ago. But going back to EVs, so the one that disappointed me the most was the Audi Q4 e-tron. That display looked so cheesy and so bad. Like, I couldn't get over how bad it looked. Just the display, like, in general behind the steering wheel, like, it just looked cheap. It looked like something from the '90s to me. I was not a fan.
The one
That's interesting.
the one that we tested had a heads up display, and I don't know if it was a bug in just the one vehicle, and I think somebody from Jalopnik had the
also had the
same
same
issue,
thing.
but it had this like floating UFO that would just like hover around.
It's like when you go to the eye doctor and they shine the light in and you see that dot. And we both had it. And I was like, is this because of where my head is? And then the Jalopnik person shared about it. So I don't remember the display because I was distracted by the heads up display.
Half the time I was driving, and I was like,
I think the best heads-up display was the EQS.
Oh
yeah.
'Cause
yeah.
it was, like, animated and changing colors and, like, had tons of information, and it was
Oh,
crystal
In the
clear, like
arrows, I thought what was so cool about that one was like as you approach the intersection, the like left arrow is getting
gets
closer, and then
bigger.
it's
Yeah.
in the intersection. It's so good.
That is one of those, like, I didn't know I needed that until I had it, and then it's like, I want this on every car,
That
please.
Yeah, that's the one where I used to like say I don't like heads up displays, and then I saw the EQS. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
I
yeah,
actually
yeah,
do like them if they're done well.
yeah.
so, couple more questions, and I gotta take off, um, go and pick up my son, we're gonna get some haircuts after this. So you guys recently won an award. So, how did that come about, and can you share the number of road trips you undertaken to earn such an honor?
It was a complete surprise, actually. So we're members of the Electric Vehicle Association, and, they just let us know, like, I don't know, a week before the award that we'd been nominated and won. I guess it's sort of from their pool of members.
Yeah, I don't know if they had, because I don't even think they had that category listed last year. So I don't know if it was they sort of came up with the award or they created this category. But apparently, yeah, we were nominated and we won.
Where's the award now?
Oh, it's in our
It's in
office.
our
I could
office,
go get
yeah.
it. It's totally on display next to our
Um,
Mach-E pony.
but we were sort of like a little bit stunned because it's like for 2023 where we actually didn't do a ton of road trips. We did like Vegas and San Luis Obispo. We hadn't done like huge road trips last year for the most part. Um, but I think part of what it was recognizing us for is that we because it's not just like road trippers as in you made the most road trips or anything like that. It was road trip ambassadors, and I think part of what they were looking at is like we are generally very out there. Um, when we're charging, we're like meeting other people. I helped push an e-tron to the charging station because it ran out of juice. I've helped RAV4 owners understand they can't use a fast charger in their RAV4 Prime. Like, I've done like all of this, like helping other EV owners. We both have.
Mhm.
Liv hands out fancy ponies to
When
other
I meet
Mach-E owners.
Mach-E owners.
But
Oh,
we also
is that
meet
kinda like the duck Jeep thing?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. I love the Jeep Ducky thing. It was my background on my phone for the longest time, the giant Jeep Ducky that they had at Detroit. So yeah, I wanted to give out something as cute. I mean, Duckies are pretty adorable. Do you have one?
No. Has
No.
anyone ever given you a pony?
Yes, Ashley from Mustang Mach-E Girls Club. She gave me a little unicorn with a little packet. Hers was like way more put together. I'm like handing people this like janky looking little pony, but yes, we have gotten. Have we gotten? Oh, we've gotten Matchbox
Yeah.
Mach-E's. What's the other one? Hot Wheels.
Matchbox and Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a matter. I think it was more about like they know that we're out there and we're trying to educate people. We've done some like how to do EV route planning, how to deal with chargers. We did like one video when we were in Colorado where we like visited ChargePoint, EVgo, Electrify America. We did urban, suburban, and very, very rural charging stations, trying to explain to people like how to find chargers. And for a lot of cars, whether it's Tesla or Mach-E, it should be fairly simple. Like it's in the navigation system. The navigation system handles that, but there's still a lot of people that don't necessarily know. And we see those questions and we try to answer them and give as much help as we can.
Yeah, when we first learned about the award, the whole like EV road trip thing, I was like, what road trips? But then ambassadors, we very much are ambassadors. We don't road trip nearly as much as some YouTube channels or some creators, but I'd say probably as much as the normal person. So but we're definitely ambassadors of EV tripping.
I mean, speaking of road trip, I don't know, like, is Kyle ever home? He's
No.
always on the road. Um, but that's why I think like channels like you and like Tesla Joy, for example, are so important to the community because you're educating, new buyers and new people into EV lifestyle. So going off that, say, I haven't bought an EV yet. I'm a first time buyer. What advice would you give me?
Hmm.
At this time, especially for like people around here, if you don't have charging at home, maybe not do it just yet. And specifically around here, whether it's Tesla or CCS, charging stations are so full during the day, it can be a pain to charge.
At home or at work? At home or at
Or
work?
at work, yeah, if
Yeah.
you have charging at work. But the other thing is like we try to talk to people and make sure that it will sort of fit their needs. And there was one guy that's like, I drive from Denver to Wisconsin twice a month and I don't stop, and it's like a 16-hour drive. And I'm like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have an EV because that's a lot. Um, but I our advice is
Your advice.
my advice to them is don't stress about it. I had these same worries. Trust the car, trust that there will be charging, um, and plan. Like it's like you can't treat it like a normal car where the gas light comes on, so then you pull off at the next exit and get gas. I was like, when you leave one charging station, you need to know where your next stop is going to be and potentially have a backup plan. But for the most part, it's just like you just have to modify your thinking a little bit. And then of course, if people are the type that are like, yeah, I don't do road trips, I'm like, don't worry about it. Just get a car because it doesn't matter then.
Yeah, totally. I think that's my advice is like, don't be scared. Just be realistic about what your needs are and what your lifestyle is. Cause sometimes I think people are hesitant to get an EV because of that one time a year that they take a road trip. And my old car was a 98 RAV4. I did not road trip that. If we were going to road trip back when I had that, we would rent a car. So think realistically about how you might address those challenges and like what you need in your daily life. Because if you're able to have charging at home, and you mostly drive in the city and maybe road trip once a year at home or at work, it's so great. It's
We
so awesome.
we often try to like give people real examples to give them advice. So like here in our local area, when I talk to people, I say like typical road trip is probably Las Vegas, and it's 300 miles from Oceanside to Las Vegas. And I sort of talk them through the process. And I go, more than likely, you're going to drive 300 miles, and more than likely you're going to leave in the morning and probably stop for lunch somewhere and then go to Vegas. I was like, we do the same thing with our EV, except the only difference is like we make sure that the EV is charging while we have lunch. So we have to plan where that stop is going to be. So that's the only limiting factor, but we're doing the trip the same way, and it takes us the same amount of time, because 300 miles in a gas car or EV, you're going to stop for lunch. You're going to spend 35, 40 minutes having lunch and then go on your way. So it's a matter of like talking people through things so that they change their mentality about refueling.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I knew nothing about EVs when I started working here. Like, I knew who Elon Musk was. I heard of Tesla, but that was like my extent of my knowledge. So for me, my advice is just test drive one, experience it. Um, if there's free charging here at Monroe, there's about 8 chargers here, so that's nice. Um, my house, I don't have a garage. I have a little shed. So that's my issue. I want to move. We plan on moving eventually, within the state, but move. And I'm hoping my next house has an attached garage, then I can have a charger installed and be good to go. And personally, like, I really like the brand that Rivian is building. Like, I really like the R1T, and I think that would be my choice as of right now.
I'm excited to see what the R2
So
March 7th,
excited.
apparently.
Yes. Sandy got invited, but unfortunately he has another commitment. So we're gonna see if someone else from Monroe can go.
I was gonna be like, we'll go. We'll go.
Monroe blog.
Monroe blog.
All right. So I'll leave you with the last question. What is the future for both you and your channel? Where do you think you guys are heading?
More EVs, more EV content. We want to continue expanding what we cover, so that we've actually for the past year and a half have been talking about, should we not be Mach-E vlog, but like the EV vlog, because
or something else.
because we do love covering all EVs. We love our Mach-E. We're not going to get rid of it. So do we expand? Do we change our name? And we also want to cover stuff like we got solar put up on our roof, and started getting into some of that, as well as electric bicycles. So who knows? I don't know. We have so many ideas. We just still want to take road trips. We want to do some massive road trips this year. Continue to meet people and educate people on EVs.
Have a great time. Make a lot of content. Use a lot of vacation time for this. That's the plan today. But yeah, maybe rebranding.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I like we're so used to saying Mach-E vlog, and people know us as Mach-E vlog. I don't want to lose that, but
and I write for a Girl's Guide to Cars, so we get sent EVs to test.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's super nice.
It is interesting because we actually had one manufacturer where we were trying to get a press loaner, and they're like, okay, that we met the person. They were like super enthusiastic, and then we made the request to get the press loaner, and they're like, there's no way I could submit to my boss to send a car to the Mach-E vlog.
That would be the sole reason to change it, of course. Like, we're as biased as anyone is if they own a vehicle, but we try to be as impartial as possible. But yeah, the incentive to change would be to open up opportunities for us, not to change our vehicle or anything like that.
Yeah, we don't want to be, and not going to point out any particular YouTubers, but we've seen some that will buy an EV and then 2 months later sell that one and buy another, and then sell that one and buy another. First of all, we can't afford that, and then second of all, that's just not like our mentality, and we do like the fact that we do say that we're Mach-E vlog and Mach-E owners, and a lot of our reviews will be like EV6 review by Mach-E owners, because we want to put it out there right at the front. It reminded me of like in the early days when the Mach-E was new. There was one reviewer that just trashed the Mach-E, and it turns out they are a true like diehard gas Mustang owner, and they hate EVs. But they didn't say that at all in the article. So then it just sort of like, well, your bias is there. I'd rather say it. We have a Mach-E, but I still like the Bolt, or I still like the Model Y, or I still like the...
Yeah, and I fall in love with 90% of the cars we end up with. And if I don't like them, I do, don't I? That we test.
So we're rambling. We don't know what's going to happen.
It doesn't matter what you review. When you become big enough, you're just going to be a Tesla shill or a Ford shill.
Oh, yeah.
Or it doesn't matter what we review. Everyone thinks we're bought and paid for by that company.
Yeah. It's funny because I see like Kyle Connor, like you can literally like see one tweet or one video to the next, and then one would be like, he's just a Tesla shill, he only talks about Tesla, and then the next one is like, I don't know why he hates Tesla, and you're like, it's literally the same video.
We get the same thing. Yeah, so we go the press vehicle route, and a majority of the OEMs they don't care. They give us the car, we have it for a week, do whatever you want. They don't care. Certain OEMs refuse to give us a car. So just is what it is.
Yeah, I can imagine different version of having a different type of reputation.
Yep. All right. So we are about that time. Thank you both for coming on the podcast. And if this is your first time here, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you're a hater. See you on the next one.